It is also scientifically proven that every person has a certain percentage. I mean, there is no person who is completely heterosexual or completely socially normal.
And the cause, not only for LGBTQ, but also for many other things that are abnormal, is precisely the fall of man.
Suppose you were to lose your faith, would your tolerance for homosexuality increase again? I don't know. You don't know?
Because that's just one point. If I lose my faith, that's fundamental. There are also non-believers who don't believe in God. They still find it abnormal.
Leipzig Central City, August 2024. Several people who could hardly be more different are engaged in a heated debate. Will we be able to turn the conflict into a productive conversation using spectrum streak epistemology? Watch the video to the end and find out. This method is amazing.
Is there some statement about LGBTQ that you might have discussed earlier that's important?
Yes, I would. In my opinion, LGBTQ is something completely normal, something human, and thus also something one is born with, though it can change over the course of life.
Okay, maybe we'll do this. LGBTQ is something completely normal. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Yes, stand where you think. Okay. Tell us, why is LGBTQ something completely normal?
There have always been people in the LGBTQ community, and there always will be. And in my opinion, it's also scientifically proven that every person has a certain percentage. I mean, there's no one who is completely heterosexual or completely socially normal.
Okay, and you're standing on strong disagreement? Well, I'll now explain why that is. Are you listening? That it's like that is, of course, undeniable now, what you're saying. But fundamentally, it only depends on whether someone acknowledges the cause for it. And the cause, not only for LGBTQ, but also for many other things that are abnormal, is precisely the fall of man. Since the fall of man, everyone is born in sin, including me. I too was born in sin. I mean, I wasn't a Christian from birth either. Well, you have to at least, if you can't fundamentally say that yet, then you can't continue talking. And that's why humans have an inclination toward what is an abomination to God. Besides, God gave us sexuality, yes. But like everything else since the fall of man, is corrupted. And that's why it's misused, because only sexuality that doesn't prevent children between a man and a woman in marriage, only there is it not misuse.
Allow me to pick out one thing. Yes, LGBTQ is an abomination to God. Yes. Okay, so why are you standing on slight agreement?
Well, first of all, the question is what is meant by normal? Is it something normative or just something descriptive? I would have taken it as normative in the sense that it's completely okay, basically. I'd agree with that to a limited extent because I struggle with this label LGBTQ+, because I think it lumps together different things that don't necessarily belong together. I think it's very important to recognize every person's right to bodily autonomy. That means everyone decides for themselves who they sleep with, what they do with their own body. But I'd like that to be distinguished from this gender ideology we have, which I think is rather quite regressive and backward. Okay. So,
Do you believe in God? No. Do you believe this God exists? No. Aha, okay. Then it's already logical that you can't understand each other.
Yes, although, in my opinion, you can believe in God and still have an open-minded worldview and acknowledge that there are just people who are simply into the same sex. Or, as you said, want to sleep with other people. Although I think with the gene, do you mean gender as in sex, or like gene, their language gene?
Well, I mean, this idea that how much you perform certain gender roles or don't determines your own gender. I assume that when people identify as trans on that basis, it's a reproduction of very, very restrictive gender roles. I wouldn't reject gender roles, but I think it's up to each individual to decide to what extent they want to conform to them. And that's why it's important to acknowledge, sure, there are men who don't do it and women who don't do it. And that has nothing to do with them having a different gender. But what they then, whether they want to undergo any medical procedures based on that idea, that's their business.
So, then you don't primarily have anything against it. Hey, I have to interrupt you.
I'm the moderator here. A question for you. Yes. You say LGBTQ is an abomination to God. Yes. Is LGBTQ also an abomination for people who don't believe in God at all? Like him, for example?
Yes, if they don't believe in him, then of course not.
So, that means if you didn't believe in God, what would your position on LGBTQ be then? Would it change?
With LGBTQ? Yes, with LGBTQ. Well, that depends. Depends on how much the brainwashing would have worked on me then. Well, how much? I can't say that. Since I've been a believer, it doesn't work on me anymore. I can only say in my old life, when I was an unbeliever, I didn't consider homosexuality, which is also an abomination to God, as an abomination, but I was under the delusion that it had just as much to do with love as it does between a man and a woman.
So that means before you became a believer, you actually accepted homosexuality more than you do now. Actually, even unrestrictedly. And by becoming a believer, you then said, so if you were to lose your faith again now, would your tolerance for homosexuality increase again? I don't know.
You don't know? Because that's just one point. If I lose my faith, that's fundamental. Yes, then, you couldn't have hardened it. There are also non-believers who don't believe there's a God. They still find it abnormal. Okay.
Did you actually hear? Yes. Do you find anything about it convincing enough to say, I'll take a step over here?
Well, the only argument against the LGBTQ community is that God doesn't want it. For me, it's an argument based on good arguments and, of course, scientific aspects that back it up. And when he says before he was Christian, or before he was a believer, he accepted gays. Yes, and then he became a believer and suddenly says he's faithful. Yes, to me, it just shows how unreflective and actually how human-despising religion is. Or faith.
Okay. Please all go to neutral. I have a new claim. Religion is human despising. Please stand where you think. Religion is human despising. I meant something with religion. Well, I'm speaking a bit more specifically. Okay, a bit more specific. Well, alright then. That's obvious now, right? You always try to get relatively punchy statements. So, if you're unsure...
If you mean by religion what religion is, then I'm on board right away. You're strong. if you mean by religion that religion is actually religion.
Religion is human despising. Are you at strong agreement? Yes, religion too. But my faith isn't a religion. Oh, okay. Cool. Okay, then let's do that though. I need to specify that, because in my opinion it's... Okay, make a suggestion.
That religion is human despising. Catholicism and Islam.
Just Catholicism. Oh, okay, good. So we'll do, Catholicism is human despising. Aha. Agreement, yes. Very interesting. Very interesting. You're both standing on strong agreement. We have one disagreement here. Sorry? Catholicism. Catholicism. Okay.
Why are you standing there? Well, I wavered between slight disagreement and disagreement. I'm not Catholic. Don't want to be either. But I think that in this generality, it's wrong. I think that fundamentally, the Christian religion has produced a lot of good. Like the idea of individual rights, basically, which we don't have, for example, in Islamic forced collectivism. And for that, well, that's at least something Christianity deserves credit for too. Or such a Jewish and later Christian tradition. And so I struggle with this statement, although at the same time, and that's why I don't know, I'm wavering a bit. Well, I'd also say, at the same time,
I think there's a rule that you can't stand between the things. You have to be exact.
then I'll stand here. At the same time, I naturally acknowledge that Christianity has produced things. Be it, persecution of, homosexuals, anti-Semitism, and so on, which are human despising. But in this generality, I think it's very oversimplified. Okay.
Why is Catholicism human despising?
Catholicism is human despising for several reasons. On one hand, I'd especially say human rights despising, because for me it's, there are several reasons. On one hand, it says in the Old Testament, in Catholicism, yes, simply that it, is an abomination to be homosexual. But I don't want to rely on a serious argument. For me it's also, that, for example, you're not allowed to use contraception. Says, I'm not sure if it's still in the New Testament, but it's definitely in the Old one. You're not allowed to use contraception.
Yes, I think also, New Testament, exactly.
New Testament, exactly. You can draw that from all of Christianity. Okay. I also don't think, it's compatible with human rights. Because I think it can. Because with that, you're restricting in a certain way. Or also sex only after marriage. You're restricting the libido, the strongest human drive, in a certain way. Yes, and I think that's against human rights. Abortion is another thing. Or that you, well, as I said, there are many points where you can criticize it. Yes. Are his reasons also your reasons?
No, not at all. Not at all. To be strong disagreement. No. Wait a sec. No. We're still on Catholicism, how it despises humans. I have completely different
reasons, yes. Yes. I mean, no human despising. With denying God. That doesn't work at all. So it's no human despising? Well, whoever despises God, they must inevitably despise humans too. Even, because the only reason to respect, a human is because they were created by God.
Because I can also respect a person because I find them likable, because I like their core values, their compass, but also because I like their compass. I can also not only like or respect people just because they were created by God. I think every person deserves respect, and not because God created them, but because we're all equal. Every person is worth the same. That has nothing to do with them all being from God.
The heart of the godless is worth less. It is written. That's your opinion, but I think that's also human despising.
Well, I go by what's written. I have to ask a question now. Do you think human despising is good or bad? Bad. Why does it say? Okay.
Because, but the trick is, that certain things are declared as human despising, right? No, because, no, it's just that if I find LGBTQ, abnormal, then you're put in that box. human despising because it's claimed completely out of context that the human has that right. Who gave it to them then if there's supposedly if there's no God?
Is that the reason you're standing here? Now I'm saying you formally. No, I'll make it generic. I say you to everyone. So is the reason you're standing here? I don't have a problem with you. Yes, okay, no. I don't put any value on that. Is the reason you're standing here? I don't have a problem with you. Yes. Good. Great. Is the reason you're standing here? Yes. The idea that you, as a Christian, are human despising. No.
Is a reason. They try to pin that on others then. If I stand for certain things, then the more often the opponent tries to label that as human despising to me then. So do you believe
Christianity is human despising? The real one, no. But Catholicism, yes.
Would you say Catholicism is godless? Yes. Okay, and that's why, agreement? Yes. Believe me a question?
Good question. Tight.
it's worse than atheism? Because atheism designates, at least doesn't say it does in the name of God. The Catholic Church has committed the greatest atrocities and still claims it's in the name of God. So that's even more godless. You could even say it's more godless than atheists, who at least don't claim they do what they do in the name of God. Yes.
Yes, so that's... Yes, you're in agreement, right? Yes. First, I find that difficult in the Catholic Church. They supported Hitler in 1930 with the Reich Concordat. And a lot too, they just exploited God. I don't think that's good either. But what I wanted to ask, they misused his name.
Okay. The Catholic Church, among others, misuses the name of God. Okay.
And further, what I wanted to ask, or what you might have wanted to ask, is if you had to define human rights violation. In my opinion, it's because a person isn't respected due to various attributes they have as a human. Appearance, faith, sexuality, gender, etc., skin color, culture, ethnicity. And in my opinion, what you said about boxes are objectively seen, it's simply human rights despising if you don't accept their sexuality. If I say, you hetero pig, you normie, that's also human rights despising. And that's actually okay. And you can't argue that human rights despising becomes gender.
You have to separate what a person does from what a person is. I said why I don't have human rights despising. And the only reason is, as I said, you don't acknowledge it because you deny that there's a God. But the only reason I have no right to human rights despising is because every human is created by God. But I can very much but I will continue to consider that an abomination, consider it bad, and condemn just as God condemns. And God revealed that in His Word. And that's why the Catholic Church is also godless, because it doesn't adhere to God's Word, but takes it out of context and misuses it. That's why it uses God.
Okay, good. We can now, do we want to switch somehow? Do you maybe want to take the scepter? Yes.
Yes, good. New claim. I mean, you talked about this earlier, too. Every woman has the right to an abortion. Every woman has the right to an abortion. Okay. You positioned yourself on strong agreement first. What's your main reason for that?
My main reason for that is that for various reasons, the woman still bears the child, the woman has the child. That means the only ones, well, I think the man can't say abort either, but the decision now comes down to the woman first. And in my opinion, it's still the woman's decision because I think it's also... Because the woman simply, it's her body, her rights. That's it. And I think especially in cases what's reasonably expected from the other discussion partner, especially with rape or something, where thankfully it's legal to abort in Germany, it should absolutely be legal. But in Germany, it's still not legal to abort, which I don't think is okay. And also human despising, because I think that should be a human right. And as I said, women's bodies, and I think it's not a word either, because a fetus doesn't do anything. It's like if you kill a cow, which every meat eater does.
If I understand correctly, the essential reason is the right to self-determination over the woman's own body. Exactly. Okay. You heard what he said. What would you counter that with?
Well, first, it's not the woman's body, but it's another body. It's not her own body. A child is conceived, is from the start of conception a human, and then another body grows in the woman's body. So this claim that it's her body is already false. I also don't believe that's what scientists claim just because someone calls themselves a scientist. As I said, so the statement is already wrong. It would be her. Consequently, when she aborts, she's not only deciding over another body, but over another soul. And with that, the only difference is it's both murder. The only difference is that one happens inside the womb and the other happens outside the womb. Besides, even if a woman doesn't want her child because she was raped, for example, which the child isn't to blame for. There are even baby hatches. She could even put in a baby hatch anonymously instead of killing it. And here, people always talk about human rights, and he or that person supposedly has the right to abort. Then my question is, who gave them that right then, if there's supposedly no God?
Do I understand correctly that the central reason for you is that abortion means deciding over another body, the child's, and thus is murder? It is murder.
A human is a human from conception. Okay. If scientists claim the opposite, I don't believe them just because they call themselves scientists.
Does that mean if you were to hypothetically learn that a human isn't a human from conception but from some later point? Purely hypothetical, would that change your conviction?
I never work with hypotheses. Okay. I always work with what really is. Okay. That's flowed out because this hypothesis has nothing to do with reality or with the truth. This doesn't exist in that sense.
Okay. You're standing on agreement. Yes. You've now heard two arguments, two very opposing arguments. Was anything said that changes your own position?
No, not so far.
Okay. Would there be something you could learn or something someone else could say to you that could change it?
What for if, well, I'm standing here because I think personal freedom is important to me. But I also think that, abortion shouldn't be legal up to the 9th month or something. That's why I'm not on strong agreement. Is that good? Yes. Slikt agreement. Yes. Maybe my relationship to it would have to change somehow, like a child has rights too. And if I heard something now that emphasized a child's right to live more, I might go to slight agreement. I don't know exactly what that could be.
Okay, so to speak in the slight agreement range, not neutral or disagreement.
Yes, that's what I could imagine.
Okay, I'd say new, yes?
I'd just say, the one standing at disagreement now. He said the baby is already alive. And that it would be murder. First, murder is the most brutal and insidious way to kill a person. I don't think abortion is brutal and insidious. And second, the characteristics of life, the biological characteristics of life. Irritability, breathing.
Deal with something like nutrient intake disagreement. Okay.
Child outside the womb, that's possible. Yes, I understand. Let him finish briefly first. But it's not alive yet. The characteristics of life are food, nutrient intake, breathing, irritability, movement, and reproduction. Yes, those are the characteristics of life in biology. Such a small fetus. And I understand the argument that you shouldn't abort a 9-month-old baby. I understand that too. I agree with that. But in Germany, it's possible up to the 12th week. And up to the 12th week, it's not a baby yet. It's still an embryo. And I'd say killing an embryo, which isn't killing anymore. I'd say more like removing. It shouldn't be punishable.
My human, if a living soul, I think no. You're on screen now. You're stepping out of the camera.
And in my opinion, it's also, what I'd like to tell you. Alright, yes, as I said, I already mentioned the human rights thing. But the body doesn't belong to God, the body belongs to the woman. The woman has her image, the woman has her mind, the mind belongs to the body. That means she's born with her body, the body belongs to her. She can decide what. You can also decide what you do with your body. I can too, because it belongs to me. And I think if the body belongs to someone, they should be able to do what they want with it. Because I can get tattooed too. I can do what I want. Because it's my property. And the woman's body belongs to her too, which is why she should be able to abort. Or it should be legalized.
As long as I understood correctly, not yet speaking of, can you say, the child's independent life then?
Exactly, that's how it is in most countries where abortion is legalized, that after 12 weeks it's no longer allowed because then it's a fetus, a baby. But up to 12 weeks, it's still in the embryo state. And that's then like eating a fertilized egg. And it's not alive yet. And that's why you can't label it. I know murder only applies to humans. That's why you can't say if we eat an egg, it's animal murder. Because it's not a being yet.
Okay. There was already contradiction. Well, that's first of all a pseudoscientific claim to justify the murder then. Second, the seed comes from the woman. Without the seed, it's not possible. Does the seed come from the woman? No. It comes from a man. And only when the egg and seed come together is it possible that, as I said, from conception, God then forms humans in the womb. And no one has the right to murder there. As I said, that's a claim that it's not a human yet, but supposedly just a clump of cells or something, which is presented as scientific.
Would either of you two like to counter anything? If not, I'd move to the next thesis. Good, also a topic we had earlier. With that, I'd slowly wrap up. There are exactly 2 genders. Okay, then I'll come to you two first. Maybe start with you. You've said the least so far. What's your main reason for standing on strong conviction?
Yes, because there are 2 gametes, so eggs and sperm. And because those are the only gametes involved in reproduction. And how someone feels or how someone dresses has, as I understand it, nothing to do with it. And that's why there are only two.
Okay, so which gametes someone produces as the essential criterion for gender, and thus only two?
For the concept of gender, there are also people who might not produce any gametes, but there's at least no third gamete type involved in reproduction somehow. Yes.
Is that also your central reason? Or would your reason be different for why you're standing here?
Not a central reason. I agree. But my central reason is as a Christian, Jesus Christ, God, and what God has revealed. And that's why my reason is always, it is written. By that, I mean exclusively the Holy Scripture, Bible, nothing else. I believe everything that's written there. That's from me like for the godless when they say, I believe scientists. It's written there. God created them male and female. That's the central reason why I believe that. The other, I go along with, but it's less central for me.
Yes. Okay, so the Bible as the essential reason. Yes, exactly. You've now heard two very different arguments. Does one of them make sense to you enough to change your conviction?
No. So first, just to clarify, you have to differentiate with genders. One's between identity genders, so what you identify with in your mind, and one's between biological gender. Biologically, it's just the fact that there are three genders. Male and female, that's 99% of people. But there are also births that don't go according to plan. A miscarriage sounds a bit harsh to me. But it didn't go according to plan. And there, the baby has both male and female gender characteristics. In puberty, it becomes clear which characteristics and which hormone is more dominant. So that's how it goes, progesterone or testosterone. And then that makes it a bit easier to classify. But they still have both gender characteristics at birth. And those are then intersex. So biologically, there are definitely three. Because my message, where the other two, or at least one, actually have a different opinion, is that you can feel like a different gender. But I think there's definitely also the non-binary gender, that you feel like nothing. And that's not like you're a ghost, that you're nothing, but you don't identify with either the male or female gender. So, to back that up scientifically again, I think the argument from the first one was pretty good, because I didn't quite understand everything acoustically. But the other one is just, the argument is just, my God told us so in the Bible. That's a bit too flimsy for me. And my scientific argument would simply be that with people who don't identify with one gender, who feel like something else, you find a different structuring in departments in the party in the brain than with cis people. But I thought the first argument, as I said, I didn't fully understand. But the second, because God said so, if God says I should oppress all women slavery, I wouldn't do that anyway. Because if he said that, purely hypothetical.
Yes, but it's not like that. Yes, so it's, if someone, recognizes the Bible as God's word, as the word of God, as God's revelation, so if someone acknowledges that everything in the Holy Scripture is breathed, inspired by God's Spirit, then I can prove a lot to them. If that person doesn't want to acknowledge it, I can't actually prove anything to them. Because that's the foundation. So, I'll only argue from there. I won't bring other arguments. Then that person just has to say, yes, I don't acknowledge that. and with that, I can't prove it to them either.
Yes. Could you theoretically be wrong with this foundation? Could it be false? No. Okay, no possibility. No, none at all. Could you learn something that would at least change your position? What do you mean by learn? So what am I supposed to learn? Some, I don't know, scientific findings, for example.
I think, well, science can disprove various structures, or what I brought up as an argument, those departments. But science can never deny one's own spirit, one's own will, one's own well-being. Can science actually deny? That's just how it is. Biologically, it set me once there are 2 or rather 3 genders. But for me, the opinion remains that it's based on emotional levels in the head. That everything, well, that always sounds very general and far-fetched too. But it's just, I also know people in my personal circle who identify as a different gender. And that's not bad, that's just how it is. I think, well, sciences, with things like this, science is, I think, secondary. Because science can't deny how someone has to feel. Science can't deny that I feel like a man. And science can't deny trans people that they feel like a different gender than what they biologically are. Science can't do that. Science can only try to investigate what causes it. And then what you couldn't really do well and establish something against it. Because I don't think that's so necessary now. Because it's not bad. It's not like I think everyone should feel how they want as long as they don't restrict other people. That's it.
Okay, so to speak, one's own feeling, how a person feels comfortable as the essential criterion. Exactly, that's the most important thing. Yes. Shem, you heard, what he said. Yes. What do you say to that? Maybe just generally. Very generally. Very generally.
Yes, I don't contradict that. So you can feel however you want. I just describe it as personalities and not as a different gender. So everything he says, that I see it the same way, but that doesn't change your gender. How you feel doesn't change your gender. That's how I put it. It's also important to me that everyone can express themselves how they want. Yes. When does one claim that? Do you want to say anything else?
Well, I think if you feel different. So as I said, this gender thing, there are 2 levels. Biologically, what gender do I have? That's the gender I have characteristics. And what do I identify with? And if I just feel different, then I don't want a different gender on paper biologically, but still, if I feel like a woman but can't get surgery yet because I'm not 80. And then I ask, what gender do you have? Then I'd still say, I'm a man. Hey, sorry, I'm a woman because I feel different. Because you're always actually asked what gender you are. Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Okay, I'd maybe do a very quick closing round where maybe everyone says 1 or 2 sentences because you don't have to leave right away. Really just very briefly, to wrap up. I feel like a tree. Does that make me a tree?
Well, I think first you have to differentiate between object identification and a different gender. But if you feel like a tree, biologically you're still a man. But what you do, what you think in your head, I can't restrict that somehow. You can do what you want. Then I don't feel biology. Yes, biology doesn't change you. But gender isn't just on a physical level. Gender can... That's a contradiction, it's a fact. No. Yes. The fact is that you're biologically a man, but the fact is also that on an emotional level, how your head identifies as. You talk about science, and feelings don't change facts. The fact is that you're biologically a man. You're right there, because you have to address my arguments. On an identification level.
It's not just biological. Because you're a man, you're a man. Yes. And if you feel like a woman, then you have a spiritual confusion. Yes. That would need therapy.
That's just human despising again. That's why I also think that faith in Jesus, when you interpret it that way, is extreme. Yes, for humans beforehand. And can you man a man? That's a late sentence then. Everyone can do that as they please too. Yes, I clarified one more thing. Okay. So just as info again. There was a boxing match at the Olympics now. And there, an Algerian boxer fought against one from Ireland. She stopped after 40 seconds. Why? Don't interrupt briefly. No, let her finish briefly. The other one then claimed she was a trans woman. But it's a fact that she was born a woman plus a chromosomal anomaly. She has XY chromosomes, the male ones. But she was what her argument is. What you rightly— I'm a chromosome. What has nothing to do with gender. She has female gender characteristics, and the female hormone balance that relates to boxing. Yes, that's now. Please very briefly. Please very briefly. No. Please very briefly. That's the problem. The thing is, she wasn't allowed at the World Championship before because she was a man. The World Championship from the IOC, from the International Boxing Committee, from the International Olympic Committee for Boxing, didn't even want to recognize that because it's a fact. She was born a woman. And there are tests too, like how much testosterone she produces, so whether she has an advantage over the others. She didn't. She has the normal female hormone balance. That's why she's a woman, remains a woman. She's not a trans woman. And there that's a topic. It's not like that with Christians. It's pushed by right-wing populist media once. But it's not like that. She's not a trans woman. She just doesn't have different chromosome pairs, which makes no difference in the sport, because what matters there is whether you hit or not. You're not allowed to produce more testosterone than your opponent. And you're not allowed to have stronger punching power. But it's true, she was born a woman. She has hormones like a woman. And she has genetics like a woman too. That means she's a woman. Yes. Why do they say she's a trans woman or a man? And a feeling doesn't change that. If she feels like a man, a false feeling doesn't change that. You said that's a human boxer. She doesn't have a penis, she has a vagina. Or is the boxer? Why did you say? So she wasn't born a man?
No, she wasn't.
What? She wasn't born a man. She doesn't have a penis. Then as what? He says, yes, she was born a man, she would have always boxed. Why is she superior to an anatomical woman if she's not a man? Because the other woman turned out to be an amateur boxer too. And she's just stronger. She trained longer, she trained more. But you could say if the other team wins in soccer that they doped somehow and have more testosterone. So she's a born woman. Exactly. She's a cis woman. That's just from right-wing populist media. She's a woman. She's a woman who identifies with her own gender characteristics. She's a woman, yes. Good, I didn't know that. Yes, then.
Give me the news again first. Well, you fell for a false claim too. True. You want to tell me you've never fallen for a false claim?
That's true already, so... But I wouldn't just know that journalistic discussion, because I don't just bring in some half-knowledge there. That's why I didn't admit it with Borka. I didn't have your information. I had different information.
It was wrong. Okay. I can only go by the information. I don't have legal quality media. Those are quality media. They've lied so much already. I maybe say at this point, I think we've heard the essential arguments.
Heard. In conclusion, if I understood correctly, it wasn't even that inconsistent anymore. With the heads, exactly. In this specific case, if your information is correct, then otherwise, I'd say we can note that there was quite a lot of disagreement. I'm already quite confused. Disagreement. But I have the impression that it still somewhat succeeded in talking about it constructively. To talk. And yes, I thank you all. What do you think?
Did we manage to turn this dispute into a productive conversation? If you want to see more content like this, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your interaction motivates us to keep going.